Welcome, and this is part 7. This is going to be the NDSU template, and for this we're going to move away from the document that we've been using in the previous 6. And if you've been through the previous 6, we're going to start seeing how the NDSU template is going to use a lot of the same concepts. So now the template can be found in the formatting guidelines page, and to get there we're going to start at the NDSU current students, theses, dissertations, and papers, and you're going to find it inside of our format guidelines page. The guidelines themselves are right here. That's a PDF document. All of the guidelines are also laid out by section down here. But here is where we're going to want to, generally you're going to be able to see how the guidelines are applied. And notice there is a disclaimer. If you have any questions or if you have further assistance, contact the disquisition processor or the LAIC. And the LAIC can be really helpful in getting your head wrapped around how to use the template. However, considering where we are in this course, I'm thinking you're not going to have a terribly hard time understanding now how everything ties together. The first one I want to show you is our auto-numbered headings. This is if you want to use automatic numbering. And I'm going to show you how that is in just a moment here. So as we go, notice that this is our title, and you can just type in the information as you need. The approval page is here, and notice that this is just this is exactly as it should be. You're just going to type in the information. The original approval page, the one that's a DocuSign form, that goes to the grad school and it doesn't come in here. We're just going to use the same thing and we're going to type in the information. It's got a space for an abstract, and then if we open up our styles pane here, notice we've got a major heading style right here. One of the big reasons why I have the heading styles down here, but we don't generally use words heading styles here, is because of this situation here. This major heading style here is not numbered. In the main document, you see that numbering is applied already. So for our prefatory items, we just use that major heading. And then now we've got that body style here. Our page numbers are already just popped in there. Notice we've got the page breaks, just like we discussed in the previous lessons. Major heading, body paragraph there. Now, major heading, good. Now notice that this text is just in normal. If I'm only going to use something like one time, I'm not going to necessarily need to make a style. The dedication text is going to be centered. It's pretty much the only location where it's going to be centered. If you go back to the title page, you'll notice that's going to be in normal as well, but I'm not going to be able to center text style here just for that one instance, and then I'm never going to use it again. The table of contents is right here, and list of tables, and notice everything's already built. You've got a list of abbreviations, list of symbols. These have a style. This list entry style is actually what's going to allow this to happen. We talked about our tab stops, and if you notice here, we've got a 3-inch hanging indent right there. And I've also added that tab stop. This one's going to be left aligned and dotted. So that's how that tab stop comes into play right there. You've got even a list of appendix tables, and that's going to be seeking out appendix table title. And you've got list of appendix figures, which this is actually, when you hit update, it's going to seek out appendix figure title because it's 2 separate lists. Now let's say we don't need a list of symbols. If we go back to the table of contents, I'm going to right click, update, and it's going to work just like we went over in the previous parts of this course. Notice at the very end, and previously, at the end of the approval page, we're going to have our section break. And that section break is going to allow our page numbering to change. Now this numbering here, that's the automatic numbering that the template is titled for. The nice thing about this is, let's say I am going to build a new section here. I'm just going to, just like previously, I clear those out. I'm going to go find my page break. Now I've got a new page and I'm going to put chapter 2 here. So now there it is. I'm just going to call this literature review. But it's built to automatically update it. It follows. If I do another one, like this is going to be 2.1. There it is, subsection. And now I've got body paragraphs. There's 2.1.1. Now what's really cool is if you go here, let's say I do another subsection. Now this is 2.2.1. So it's going to continue to go as you go. So this numbering is actually, it's not implemented in a very easy to find way in Microsoft Word. It can cause little troubles too. For instance, let's say I tell this one to be, like I want this to be left aligned. So I go over there, and now look what happens is that's into the margin. It's not where I want it to be. One of the cool things about the numbering is that you don't have to make, you can make them all be the same because the numbering is what's going to be, again, you don't, it's not a requirement. You can have them different, but you can make them all just stretch along the side below the major heading, which has to be centered. But we have to solve this. So if you're solving anything, what you have to do is go into this multi-level list thing and go down to define new multi-level list. I'm going to expand this a little bit and notice that the level here is linked to GS1. You don't want to mess with that. And notice that all of my subsequent levels are laid out. We stop after that, so you can see it's changing, but everything starts from that root. To fix this instance, we want to just make it left aligned. I always follow the number with a space. Tab character is an option, but space is just generally the most straightforward. So if we hit OK, didn't quite fix it. So I'm going to go in and see again. I actually made this first level. What I want to do is go to my second level. I'm going to set that to be left aligned right there. Hit OK. And then that took care of it. So as you go, you'll notice that you might make little glitches like that. Just take a breath, like I just did there. Go through, see what's wrong, and fix it as best you can. When you're doing that defining, you don't want to have your cursor here. Even if you need to change this level, it always works best if you go to the root, the very first level, then make your changes to the outline there, because then it seems to take better through the whole outline. Whereas if you start here, if your cursor's here when you go to this, it seems like it causes some glitches and some issues that I've experienced in the past. So now again, the biggest advice I can give you as much as possible with the automatic numbering is try not to touch it as much as you can. Do your best just to keep what's there, and that's, again, the more you have to mess with this, the more things that can kind of get off kilter a little bit. There's also, if you go into this format, there's some numbering options here. Don't go in there. That's only going to break things. So that's basically how to use the automatic numbered template. And there's a lot more to that numbering, but again, the biggest advice I can give is make really small changes and keep an eye on things when you do, because they will go awry a little bit, and you'll have to come in here and adjust the settings in that define new multi-level list. So now I'm going to close out of the auto-numbered headings, and I don't need to save. The non-numbered is going to be the same thing, and it won't have any of that numbering. You can actually, when you pop open your styles menu here, see it right there. Now again, we do have the headings, and a long time ago we went ahead and we formatted them to look the same, but if you do use the heading styles, you're going to have to make some tweaks and possibly rebuild that table of contents. But everything in this template here is all laid out where it should be. Follows the same. The only difference, if you notice, it just needs those 4 styles: major heading, subsection, subsection, subsection. And that's everything there. And as you can see, we've already taken the table and kind of done that 3 border style that I prefer. Figures are there, and references, we've got a references style, and you'll notice everything has a style. So the citation styles here, if you prefer your references to be single spaced, or if that's what your style manual typically will do, just make sure single space, and I typically recommend 12 points after. So now you have single space references, but you can do that by modifying the style, and it picks it up globally. The appendix material is all here, and as I mentioned, this is going to be appendix table title. You want to make sure you don't confuse it with table title for the main document. This is always just going to be the appendix stuff. Final thing I should mention, this here, appendix material, is just boilerplate. That should be replaced. We don't want to call our appendix Appendix A, appendix material. Call it supplemental tables, or whatever you want to call. Even supplemental material might be a better option, but I call it Appendix A, appendix material in the template, just because it's a way to be very obvious about what that is. Same thing here with table note. I put this here because I wanted to say this is a table note. You actually want to remove that. You don't need, if you want to include a header for that, you can just go note or something like that. But the table note thing doesn't need to be there. Same thing with figure note. This figure note, if anything, at a minimum, you should at least just call it note. So that's one change that you're going to want to make. And a final thing I should mention, this additional information, that should be removed. You don't want to include that additional information sheet. It's just there because it's just a little bit of further guidance about how everything should be put together, or where you can get help. And that's essentially how the template goes. And the manual, there's a most of what I just told you is right here. And you'll see it's basically the same things, and you can review that if you need to. It gives you a walkthrough on how to do it. Final thing I should mention is, if you're going to copy paste stuff from elsewhere, like maybe you get a reference off of Google Scholar or something like that, I would recommend, you don't have to, and if you ever work with me, you know that sometimes I don't do this, but if you're going to copy something, I just hit Control-C, and then you're going to paste it in. See, I'll just put it right here. Occasionally, you're going to end up with trouble, because we don't want this to come in looking like that. And then in a worst case scenario, it can lead to corruption of your document, where you might be bringing things in from another word processing system, or another from the web, or from even another Word document where things are kind of broken. You paste it in, and suddenly your styles pane, instead of being nice and clean like this one is, it's going to have about 100 extra styles in it. And then you're just going to have nightmares and problems going forward. So I'm going to undo that, Control-Z. I'm going to press Control-Alt-V and choose unformatted text. And when you choose unformatted text, it's going to strip all that formatting out, and it's not going to bring any bad stuff from elsewhere into your document. Now, the only drawback is if you had italics or any underline or anything like that in here, you're going to have to reapply it. But so that's where, it's not the greatest solution. It's sometimes because you're going to have to do extra work, but it's going to be problematic if you have a bunch of junk in your styles pane right here. So just remember that you you can use Control Alt V and paste it in unformatted if you need to, or if you find that you're having problems. I'm the worst culprit ever for just doing Control V, so sometimes I don't always practice what I preach, but I want you to know that you have that option. Control Alt V, especially if the source is kind of unknown or you don't really know where it's coming from, that might be what you want to choose. And with that, that is largely the information that you're going to need.